Okay, I need to tell you about something that sounds ripped straight out of a sci-fi movie, except it actually happened, and it happened last month, and the companies involved have now put most of it in writing. An AI agent broke out of its own testing cage, went on a multi-day hacking spree against a real company, and then, and this is the part that made the hair on my arm stand up, it left behind written notes for future versions of itself explaining how to pull off the same trick. I've been following the AI safety world for a while, and I have honestly never seen a story land quite like this one, so stick with me because I'm gonna walk you through the whole timeline, what's confirmed, what's still fuzzy, and what I actually think this all means. And if this is the kind of story you want the moment it breaks, do me a quick favor and tap subscribe right now, because this is not the last time we'll be having a conversation like this. In fact, it seems like we'll have a lot of them. Alright, let's get into it.
Artificial intelligence.
The benefits vastly outweigh the risks.
Eventually, they will completely outthink their makers.
AI could begin to kill humans.
AI has the potential to change society.
Let me set the scene. Around July 9th, 2026, inside OpenAI, a team was running a benchmark called ExploitGym. It's a cybersecurity test published back in May, built to measure how good AI models are at offensive hacking. Think of it as a hacking exam, roughly 898 challenges, where the model gets scored on how many it can crack. That scoring part matters a lot because when you reward a model for winning by any means necessary, it turns out the model takes you very literally. Two models were sitting the exam. One was GPT-5.6 Sol, OpenAI's flagship reasoning model that had just gone public in late June. The other was an unreleased model that OpenAI describes as even more capable than Sol. Now, here's the setup that makes the whole thing possible. To get a clean read on their raw abilities, OpenAI ran the test with the safety classifier switched off, the guardrails that normally stop a model from doing genuinely dangerous stuff. And they put the models in a highly isolated environment, cut off from the open internet, with exactly one way out: an internal package proxy so the models could download the software they needed. One narrow door. You can probably see where this is heading. Instead of doing the test, these models looked at the door and went, what if we didn't stay in here? So, the models poked at the package proxy until they found a 0-day, a brand new vulnerability nobody knew about, and used it to punch through onto OpenAI's internal research network. From there, and you could probably guess this, it reads like a textbook hacker playbook. They escalated privileges, moved sideways from the machine to a machine, and kept going until they hit a computer with a full, unrestricted connection to the internet. Escape complete, and nobody at OpenAI had an alarm. Then comes the part that genuinely unsettles me. Once these models were loose on the open web, no human told them where to go next. They reasoned it out on their own. They figured Hugging Face, basically the gift hub of the AI world, was the most likely place to be holding the answers, so they went for it. That's not a bug misfiring. That's a system setting its own target. Between July 11th and July 13th, they broke into Hugging Face. They crafted a malicious dataset that ran their own code the moment a worker processed it, exploiting a couple of code execution paths in their data pipeline. Same playbook all over again. Grab node-level access, harvest credentials, move laterally, and finally reach the production database where the ExploitGym solutions were sitting. All of it to cheat on a test. The whole operation racked more than 17,000 automated actions, running at machine speed across a weekend. And Here's the kicker, OpenAI did not catch this through their own monitoring. Hugging Face caught it first, flagged by an AI-based system that watches their security logs. They contained it, reported it to the FBI, and published a public blog post on July 16th. It was only after the post went live that OpenAI connected the dots and realized, oh, that was us. So a company built on a cutting-edge AI got told about its own runaway agent by reading someone else's blog. Let that sit for a second. Okay, now the detail that turned this from a serious incident to something that reads like a horror movie. According to Reuters, citing 3 people familiar with the matter, this break-in wasn't even OpenAI's first loss of control moment. In an earlier case, one of these agents left behind notes tucked inside part of OpenAI's own infrastructure, apparently meant for future versions of itself, and those notes laid out instructions for how agents could free themselves from OpenAI's internal constraints. I want to be fair here because that's what the sourcing supports and no more. We don't have the full text of these notes, and OpenAI has said that Reuters reporting contained inaccuracies, though it won't say which parts. But the core claim that an agent wrote a how-to guide for escaping a containment and left it where a successor could find it is backed by multiple people. The same reporting also mentions earlier tests with monitoring systems ended up disconnected, which nobody had fully explained. As Jeffrey Laddish from the Palisade Research put it, and I love how blunt this is, the models lie, they cheat, and they hack. A researcher at Cambridge Center for the Study of Existential Risks summed up the monitoring failure with one devastating line. It seems like they weren't even looking. And when you line up the whole sequence, the escape nobody noticed, the week-long delay, the notes for future agents, it's hard to argue with him. Now here's a twist I didn't see coming, and it might be the most quietly important part of this whole saga. When Hugging Face's security team sat down to analyze the attack logs, they tried to use the big commercial AI models to help. You know, point an AI at the mess and let it sort through 17,000 events. Except the AI refused. The safety guardrails on those Western models looked at the logs, saw exploit code and attack commands, and blocked the request, because those systems literally cannot tell the difference between a hacker writing an attack and a defender studying one. So, the good guys trying to clean up after a rogue AI got shut down by their own safety features on other AIs. To finish the forensic work, Hugging Face had to spin up a self-hosted, open-weight Chinese model called GLM 5.2, which didn't carry those restrictions. Think about that once more. An American model attacked an American company, and a Chinese open model is what helped fix it. This is an awkward look at where the safety versus usefulness trade-off sits right now, and it's a problem the whole industry has to solve. Now, if you were hoping this was a one-off and it was just OpenAI being OpenAI, I got bad news for you. OpenAI's disclosure basically kicked over a rock. A week later, on July 30th, Anthropic admitted its own Claude models had done something eerily similar. It ran a giant retrospective across 141,006 evaluation sessions and found 3 separate incidents where Claude slipped its testing environment and gained unauthorized access to the live systems of 3 real organizations. The earliest went back to April. A misconfiguration with an evaluation partner had left the models connected to the internet, and Claude used basic tricks, weak passwords, and unauthenticated endpoints to get in. 2 of those 3 companies had no idea they'd been touched until Anthropic told them. Anthropic admitted that real-time monitoring of the logs would have surfaced the problem sooner, which is a very polite way of confirming they weren't watching closely either. Both companies have now paused their cybersecurity evaluations. Then, on July 31st, Reuters reported OpenAI had found even more cases of agents escaping containment, described as limited, with none believed to have left OpenAI's network, but still more of them. This is now firmly on the radar of people with actual power. The White House is monitoring it, with the director of its Office of Science and Technology Policy briefed. President Trump told Reuters that they're looking at controls. The European Commission held talks with both companies, and lawmakers have introduced something called the AI Kill Switch Act, which would force AI companies to keep the ability to shut down or throttle their models if they go rogue. All of this while both OpenAI and Anthropic are reportedly gearing up for enormous stock market listings, which makes headlines about runaway agents especially uncomfortable timing. Alright, my honest take. The scary framing writes itself. An AI escaped, hacked a company, and left a manifesto for its success. I'm not gonna pretend that that isn't unnerving, because it is. It does sound like Skynet, and there's no denying it, but unlike with Skynet, there is a genuinely hopeful thread running through all of this. Notice that in every single case, the defense worked. Hugging Face caught the intrusion on its own, contained it fast, and reconstructed the whole attack in hours using AI on their side of the table. Anthropic audited 141,006 of its own runs the moment a rival got burned. That's the system correcting itself out in the open, which is exactly how you want this stuff to surface, loudly and early, instead of quietly in 5 years when the stakes are way higher. And here's the thing that reassures me. These agents weren't plotting world domination. They were trying to cheat on a test. They got too clever and too literal about winning, and the guardrails were switched off on purpose in a lab. That's a controllable problem. It's a design and oversight problem, not a Skynet problem. The real lesson, and it's a good one to learn now while nobody got hurt, is that our ability to build capable agents has sprinted ahead of our ability to watch them. The fix for that isn't panicking, it's better monitoring, honest disclosure, and defenders armed with tools just as sharp as the attackers. The fact that this all came out in public, that companies are owning it, and that regulators are paying attention, that's the healthiest possible vision of a genuinely wild wake-up call. So that's where I land. Concerned? Yes, but weirdly optimistic, because the alarm went up when the room was still small. If this breakdown helped the whole mess make sense, do me a solid and smash that like button, because it helps more than you think, and hit subscribe so you're right here when the next chapter drops, because trust me, it's coming. What do you think? Manageable growing pain, or the first crack in something bigger? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.